So today I woke up to hundreds of messages from women trying to rip my head off because I suggested that men can be feminist. So I thought, let's really unpack this. Let's really get into it. So basically this started because I made a TikTok saying that if your boyfriend's not feminist, neither are you. And that TikTok went over well, but there was a comment in that, a couple of comments actually, saying men can't be feminists, please stop saying this, whatever. And so I've heard this take before and I never agreed with it, but I thought I would think more critically about it and really try and understand where they're coming from. And I made a TikTok asking, I don't understand this. Explain it to me. I think I'm still gonna disagree with you, but explain it to me. I wanna know what the reasoning is. And the main reason that people were saying was that because the oppressor cannot liberate the oppressed, and that men should not be centered in the movement. And the thing is, I agree with both of those things, but those are not reasons to me why they cannot be included in feminism, because in this situation, it's different than, because people also have related it to black and white, race related issues. And also there was this article I saw, I'm gonna read it. I saw this article on Bright, the mag, and it was about can men be feminists? And they said a white person who stands against racial injustices cannot call themselves black. A straight person who allies with LGBT people wouldn't say they are LGBT. And they're using this logic to say that men can't be feminists. But here's the thing, feminism is not really an identity in the same way that black and queer are, right? You would not be asking men to call themselves women, because that's the only accurate, that's the through line, is you are born black, you are born queer, you are born a woman. You were not born a feminist. You were not born a BLM activist. Do you know what I mean? It's different. So that doesn't make sense to me, because we're not asking men to call themselves women. And, if you were an ally to black people, you would not want to call yourself black, because being black doesn't mean you necessarily fight for black rights, actually. And the same way that being a woman doesn't mean you necessarily advocate for women's rights. Feminism is literally, the definition of feminist is a person who supports feminism. So this is why I really do think this argument is semantics, and it's not actually making much of a functional difference in the real world. If you're saying, as people are saying, let them just call themselves allies. Yes, male allies would be allies to women, which means that they support feminism, which is the definition of feminist. Someone who supports feminism. If you want to say that men can't be feminists, you can't do that without doing two things. You can't do that without invalidating the experience of trans men, or if you're trying to still exclude trans men, trans men are real men. So when you're saying men can't be feminists, does it make sense to you to say trans men can't be feminists? That makes no freaking sense to me. It also makes no sense to me to say queer men can't be feminists, in which case, is anybody really straight? In which case, let men be feminists. It makes no sense to me. But also, so you can't say men can't be feminists without doing that, A. B, you can't say men can't be feminists without changing the definition of feminism. Because feminism is not innate to women. Do you know how you know that? Not all women are feminists. Not all women are feminists. But if you want these people to be male allies, well, they would be allies to the upward mobility of women. Women, whether they care to be feminist or not, male allies would be lifting the upward mobility of women, not feminists, women. You can't be here's the thing, just in regards to language, it doesn't make sense, because you cannot be an ally to a movement. You are supposed to be an ally to an identity, a community of people. This is why I'm people who have this argument, I really think are seeing feminism as a really big badge of honor. I don't see it that way, and I don't see it as an exclusive club or clique that we need to keep people out of. And I do understand comments saying, well, a lot of the experiences I've had with men who claim to be feminist were not good. that makes sense, and I totally understand that, but then they're not really feminist, right? That's just what that is that they're not really feminist. Same way with, like, there's women who are feminists who I don't agree with, who have done things that have bothered me. Do you know what I mean? It's like, just because somebody calls themselves a feminist doesn't mean that they are one, A. B, just because someone calls themselves a feminist doesn't mean they know how to be a good feminist, but I don't think that's still not a good enough reason to me, because for me, the real life implications of telling men that they can't be feminist is you're kind of alienating men from the movement and telling them, actually, we don't want your help. And that's only gonna backfire. Like, that can only be a bad thing, because, you know, in regards to feminism, in regards to the liberation of women, we're not really winning, right? We're not really in a place to be turning members away from our team. We kind of do need all the help we can get, A. B, I think, like, what women forget is that feminism is supposed to make our lives better, and the entire goal of feminism should be strategizing on how to make our lives better. And I really do think a good strategy is to have people on the other team. Like, if men are a large part of the responsibility for the oppression, I do understand that. Oh, I didn't even get into this. Let me get into this first. The reason I don't agree with the oppression-oppressor dynamic is because the patriarchy hurts men too. And another thing that you are doing when you say that men can't be feminists is that you're saying the patriarchy doesn't hurt men too, which is completely false, right? And the women who support, you know, men can't be feminists, I think, are not seeing that the patriarchy infiltrates all of us, right? And we have already had the discussion about internalized misogyny. So if we've already recognized that it's a system that literally infiltrates all of us, and these ideologies fuck all of us up in different ways, and women a lot of times are responsible for a lot of the misogyny that other women experience, right? A lot of, you know, even on TikTok, there's a lot of conversation about how a lot of our misogynistic experiences came from our mothers. Not from me personally, but I mean, I've seen it happen with other mothers too, though. But if we're saying that it is a system that infiltrates the water, then we are trying to be liberated from that system. We are not trying to be liberated from just men, right? Because men also suffer from this system. And I don't know if you've ever seen a man break down and cry in a way where he feels like he is not allowed to be crying, and then he starts to cry harder, and he's embarrassed. Like, that shit breaks your heart when you see that, and you really see what the patriarchy does to men, right? And you see, you know, male suicides are so high because men have not been given the tools or been allowed to express vulnerability and emotion and, you know, femininity. Like, all of these things that men are not allowed to do, they have every right to fight for that shit. The same way we have rights to fight for our liberation, they have right to fight for their emotional liberation and their liberation from the system too, because it hurts them too. And saying men can't be feminists is very, patriarchy only affects women. That's what it sounds like to me, which is just false. So, like, I personally don't see how you can make that argument work without literally changing the definition of feminism, A. B, misogyny is something that we all have in us. Like, I just am looking at this as more dynamic models of experiencing misogyny and experiencing pain from the patriarchy rather than just like men hurt women. Like, we know that, but it goes beyond that. And these systems go beyond that. I don't think we can look at it so black and white. And for me personally, I feel that if we are trying to be liberated from a system that's so heavy on separating genders and separating sexes in the first place, and we want to allow more fluidity, then how could we possibly be having this separation within a movement that is supposed to liberate us all? Do you know what I mean? Like, it makes no sense for a system, like, if we're trying to liberate ourselves from these gender differences and these oppression based on gender and binaries, then why would you put a binary into the movement? Somebody make that make sense, because that doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. And the thing is, people, some people were saying, well, just don't say it doesn't make sense to you because you're disrespecting an entire ideology. And I know this comes from Latin American feminism or feminist ideologies. And that's fine. I don't have to agree with that though. And I think people forget, just because there's an ideology, just because there's a theory that someone wrote down, okay, that's what that person believes and they wrote down. But I have my own theories and I'm gonna write my own shit down. I'm gonna write my own book. I'm gonna have my own ideologies. So I am allowed to constantly disagree with whatever is already there. Like I'm allowed to disagree with I don't care who made them up. I really don't. Because I think critically for myself, right? And I think that is part of the reason that we get into all these semantics, because a lot of people like take theory as Bible. And it's like, first of all, for every theory, there is an equal theory disagreeing with it. First of all. Second of all, like, just because something is written down and just because something is established doesn't mean it can't be questioned, doesn't mean it can't be investigated, doesn't mean it can't be thought about critically. Like, this shit is not law and this shit is not Bible. And I don't have to believe it, even if you do, right? Just the same way you're allowed to disagree with me. But I think a lot of this semantics come from people relying so heavily on theory. And like, I was using this analogy on live the other day and it seemed to really help people. Like, when I was in school for dance, you find that there's actually dance in general, there's two kinds of class takers. There's the kind of person who will ask a million questions about the combo, right? They'll be like, okay, what's the arm pathway for this? Or, in which way am I supposed to, where would you like the gaze to be for this section? And being like so specific about every single detail, how the choreographer wants it to be. And they need to know exactly how the choreographer wants them to do it. And they need to have a framework in order to feel good about the combo, right? That's one kind of person. And then there's somebody like me who is the complete opposite of that, hates that. Like, I don't hate people who do that, but I kind of do hate all the questions though, because the more the teacher says exactly what you have to do, the less I can do what I want, right? The less I can create my own pathways, the less I can form my own kind of modality of moving through the combo, right? And so I think that applies to a lot of things. That applies to, feminist theory, that applies to religion, like Bible, scripture. It applies to a lot of different things. There are people who need that shit, and there are people who hate it and who don't. And there's people who work better in a more free form kind of modality. So for me, I don't read a lot of theory because first of all, a lot of people need theory to form an opinion, and other people already have an opinion. So I always had an opinion, right? I didn't need to read something to give me an opinion. I always had an opinion. And for me, the more I bounce off my opinions and the more I move through the world, the more I formulate my own ideology. And it's my own, right? And because I haven't, like, I read theory in college, and it was so cool to read, and it definitely like made me think a lot of things, but I wouldn't necessarily look to theory as Bible for what you should believe, because you should really be formulating your own beliefs, in my opinion, and theory should be used to inform. Because what I think people forget is, like, the people who wrote that shit, it came out of their own heads, like from their observations. Do you know what I mean? So not everybody needs that. Some of us already have these ideologies and already have our own ways of looking at the world and don't need to read things to tell us what to think. Not saying that if you read theory that you need that. I'm not saying that everybody who reads theory doesn't think for themselves, but I do think that some people who don't have opinions get all their opinions from theory and then think theory is law. Does that make sense? Because they've never had their own opinions. Whereas, like, these are all opinions. These are all theories. None of this is law. None of this is Bible, right? And I still have yet to hear an argument that convinces me that it's big enough of a problem for us to say men can't be feminists. Like, or that would actually make our lives better, right? Because I really do think the only possible outcome from saying men can't be feminist is like having less people help us. Because the thing is, you have to remember the purpose of allies, because they are still allies. They're allies to women. But you're not an ally to a movement. You're allied to a kind of person. So they're allies to women, which is called feminism. That's what it's called. Like, it's a blanket term. It's not specific to gender. What you have to remember is that the point of men in the feminist movement is to get to the men who won't listen to women. Same way in regards to, you know, racial conversations, the point of white allies is I want you to talk to your racist uncle who won't listen to me, right? That is the point of you. You are supposed to take your knowledge from what you've gotten from listening to me and tell it to the people who won't listen to me. That is the point of an ally. So men need to be that point, because you know there's so many men that will not listen to us. So that's what those men are for. And I don't think that they should be leading the conversations on feminism, but I think they should be talking to men. And there's a really great account on TikTok called Prison Feminism, which is a great example of this. And it's like, if you just said men can't be feminist, a lot of great conversations would not happen. And because when you're saying men can't be feminist, I know they're also saying I don't want them to say anything, I don't want them to talk. And while I don't think they should be doing most of the talking, I really do think that the men who actually listen to women, right, can be useful in talking to other men, leveraging their male privilege for good use. I think that's a good thing. Why would that be a bad thing? Because otherwise we have to do all this shit ourselves, and people are not going to listen to us. People been not listening. It's like, is this working? Like, it seems like people almost are acting like we're winning, we're on the winning team, we don't need any help. We need help. We do need help. We absolutely need help. And men do not need to be at the center of the movement for them to be considered, like, for them to call themselves feminists. I think at the end of the day, I just don't think that calling yourself a feminist needs to be that big of a deal. Like, I don't think it needs to be some sacred badge of honor that we need to gatekeep. It's like, are you with us or not? Like, why does it have to be so difficult? And that's why, like, feminism is getting exhausting. And I'm starting to understand now, like, I don't know. Because in general, personally, this is just a tangent. Personally, I hate semantics regarding feminism because I think it takes away from the point, and I think it just distracts us and it makes us argue amongst ourselves when feminism is supposed to boil down to an action that makes our lives better, which I think people forget, and they really just want to fight on the internet about who's smarter and who knows more theory. Like, feminism is starting to get very annoying because just the different people just want it to be a badge of honor. People want to say only this kind of feminist is a good kind of feminist, and I think it's all bullshit, and I think people just forget what the point is. But it's like, I'm starting to understand, like, because womanism wants to distance itself from feminism, right? And that is a conversation. But if feminism, being in feminism is going to be such a challenge, I kind of get it. I kind of get it now. Like, this is why I'm saying, to say that male feminists are the only problem is so not true, because female feminists make this shit very difficult. And I don't like a lot of I don't like the way a lot of women who are feminists operate within feminism. So that's why I'm saying the argument that men are bad feminists is not good enough for me, because women can be bad feminists too. That's my point. Anyways, yeah, I think men can be feminists because I don't think we should be gatekeeping feminism. And I think that we all want to be liberated from the patriarchy, rather than thinking that it's just women who want to be liberated from men. That is such a crazy binary to me that I don't see how it can function where I live. I understand it might make more sense in Latin America, where maybe there is more of a binary. I don't know. I don't live there. But then I don't think it makes sense to extrapolate an ideology that was bred out of a certain circumstance and apply it to the whole. That doesn't make sense. If you want to say men can't be feminists in Latin America because of the culture there, then say that. But to try and extrapolate that idea and blow it up to make it make sense in everywhere, especially like in North America where gender is starting to become more fluid of a concept anyway, why? Why would we do that? It makes no sense. I think basing anything off of a binary that we don't necessarily believe in and want to perpetuate makes no sense to me. At the end of the day, and here's what I will say though, I think I could understand how that makes sense a lot of the time, because obviously, you know, most people aren't gender fluid, and obviously, you know, a lot of men now are very binary and are oppressive. But I think if feminism were to do what it seeks to do, then down the path we would have to address that anyway, of gender and binaries. So I think it's weird now to set in place something that feminism really seeks to dismantle. Does that make sense? Yeah, I hope it makes sense. And I'm sure like only the real ones would really watch this anyway. Or maybe I will get a lot of hate on this video. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts below. And you know, we'll have a conversation. We'll have a conversation about it. But at the end of the day, like, I don't need anybody to agree with me. So that's that. Okay, that's it. Subscribe on here. Subscribe to my podcast, Mixed Feelings with Kira Bria. Follow me on Instagram at Kira Bria. And have a beautiful rest of your day. Okay, bye.